Welcome back to How to Tickle Yourself. I'm your host, Duff McDonald, along with my co-host, Matt McButter. I was trying to figure out how to best describe today's guest, and this is what I came up with. He is a merchant of happiness. As for the actual details, his name is Peter Shapiro, and he's the man behind not one, but two of New York's best concert venues, Brooklyn Bowl and the Capitol Theater. The most notable concert promoter since Bill Graham. He started off his career by buying the legendary Wetlands Preserve when he was barely out of college. Fast forward 20 years, and he put together Fare Thee Well, the 2015 farewell concert series featuring the four core members of the Grateful Dead, along with Phish's Trey Anastasio. He founded the Lock-In Festival and the Jammy Awards, and he has worked on multiple events on the National Mall, including the 40th anniversary celebration of Earth Day. And that is barely scratching the surface of his accomplishments. I told a half dozen people who know him that we were interviewing Pete today, and every single one of them said, I love that guy. I don't even know him, and I love him. Here's why. I've seen the following artists play at one of Pete's venues, and this isn't even a comprehensive list. Blues Traveler, Blue Rodeo, Toots and the Maytals, Galactic, Soul Live, Macy Gray, The Flaming Lips, Bob Dylan, Chris Robinson, Joe Russo's Almost Dead, Robert Plant, John Prine, Bill Burr, Phil Lesh, Eric Krasno, Bob Dylan again, and again, and again.
Wow.
Like I said, he is a merchant of happiness. Pete has written a book out this month. It's called The Music Never Stops. What putting on 10,000 shows has taught me about life, liberty, and the pursuit of magic. It's chock full of wonderful anecdotes and life lessons that would be helpful not just to a would-be concert promoter, but to anyone looking to capture some magic in their own life, whatever it is that they do. We're going to talk to him about his excellent book about rainbows and, of course, Bob Dylan. Welcome to the show, Pete.
At the present moment, my love, my dear, everything's connected. This life, this world, it's all right now, right here. Right now, right here. Right now, right here.
That John Prine show was a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever saw seats in the Capitol Theater.
Oh yeah, we go both ways. We pull them in and we go out, and we can do it. That's one of the great things about the Cap, actually, is because like a venue like the Beacon Theater, they're permanently in, or Radio City, or most theaters anywhere around the world. All the great Fox theaters that are around America, or Chicago theater, and they're fixed. So sometimes you want to go, sometimes you want to be able to go either way. Sometimes you want that GA floor. Sometimes you want seats.
That's one of the great things about the Capitol. You used a term I wasn't familiar with. You called it a raked floor in your book. And basically it's a little slanted. It's a little downhill. So anywhere in general admission is a good spot. And why are you the only one who does that?
Well, actually, it's a great rake. I mean, some venues have little rakes. The Cap has a pretty strong rake. So like, it's great because literally every person on the GA floor, and it holds 1,300 on the floor, can see the stage. And then that means shorter people, taller people, everyone. I love going to shows like you. And so a lot of what I do putting on the show comes from how I want to see a show, what I want to see. And I actually had a formative experience seeing a show, Phish, at the Vic Theater in Chicago, 1992. It's not raked, it's flat, but there's several different levels. So, the front of the stage area has maybe 10, 15 rows, and it goes up a couple feet, and then it's another 10, 15 rows of people, and then it goes up again a few feet and goes. And that tiered, I call that, I guess, tiers, like that to me, because I was in the front, the second tier, in the first row, in the center, standing there, with a half wall little, drink thing, and staring right at Trey. And so that, no, seriously, I still remember that, just talking about this. So that's kind of had an influence on me a little bit. The whole Brooklyn Bowl thing, part of it is seeing a show in those the lounge area lanes. When you are on those first lanes next to the stage, you're getting a point of view that you, like, if you're at a normal concert venue, you'd be like side stage back. They'd be like, you can't stand here, dude. And that's even if like your brother was playing, maybe the tour manager would be like, you got to move. But at the ball, so anyways, you can see, I like to dig in about how to do this stuff.
And you do it well.
Well, there's no other way, right? We were all screwed. I mean, you watch what's going on in the world, and it's seriously, when you introduce me and the way you said it, and hearing that, it feels great. Thank you. And it lasts for a little while, but then it fades away, and I happen to be traveling right now, and just everything going on in the world, it'll bring you down. And I haven't seen a show for me in a few days, which is a long time. And so I need that energy back again of happiness. We all do, because it's like, with the way the world and information works, you get hit by you need happiness.
So there's this great line in your book, which jumped out at me more than any other. You said, sometimes a music venue provides a more important function than offering a stage for a performing artist. It becomes a holy place. And you're talking about, what you were just saying there, like music as spiritual sustenance. So you're not just putting on shows. You work in the realm of the spirit. How do you think about music and consciousness?
You pulled that quote up really well, by the way. Nice job, dude. I just taught that.
But it's like you work in consciousness, right? Music and consciousness. Like, how do you describe what you do?
Kind of where you were headed. I try to make magic happen, make people happy. Do it, for the bands also. It's like creating a stage and an environment for them to get to do what they do. I've just learned from doing it every night for about 27 years. And like you said, the book's called 10,000 shows. The little things all matter a lot, so I just have just been doing it so much for how to do, when something's off, actually, that pops more than just on. And so for us at the Bowl and the Cap and all my venues, and also when you're doing a Fare Thee Well show, it's like, how do you handle security? It's like, so there's 80,000 people, Soldier Field. One of the best moves I ever did was putting the security, asking if we could have the security guards at Soldier Field wear tie-dye shirts. They still had their numbers and it was official, but by the way, that makes a difference. There's like, for that many people, there's probably 800 security, when they're all wearing tie-dye shirts. When you walk into that stadium, like, that sets a tone from the moment you see the first one, I think, versus a black shirt that just says security. Actually, at Brooklyn Bowl, and we started this at Wetlands, on the back of the security jacket, it says welcome. It doesn't say security. But these are like the little things that, like, and there's lots of little things that need to be done to, like, give someone walking into the door for a show, a higher chance that they'll have a great show. And the same with the band. I can't go all the way and guarantee the good show, but my job and then the team and all that is to, like, set the table right for then happiness or magic or the thing to happen. Then the band has to take over and the fan has to let go, let themselves get there. But I just learned, and part of it was at Wetlands, my first club, which I took over in 1996, long time ago now. It was a challenge venue by just like the basics of like sight lines. um, sightlines. So, at a sold out show, 30% of the people couldn't really see the stage, so,
Right.
but what that caused was like, so we had to be better in how we treated every part of it, because like our venue, Bowery Ballroom, like a perfect venue, or, and there's others in every city that like have the perfect sightlines and 100% of the people can see. But at Wetlands, you go to the bar, you go to the basement, you meet your wife, like, or your husband. Like I meet a bunch of people because, you could hear it everywhere. And we had a great basement lounge where the audio was good, but you couldn't. So certain people would move off rather than try to see the stage. It was just kind of at an angle. And then you would meet people, you'd hang out. So I don't think many people meet their wife at Bowery Ballroom or a perfect venue, because Wetlands was more a village and a place. It was a great place to go to a show. Wasn't necessarily a great place to
Right. For
see a
sure.
show. And so I took a lot of those things that we learned to kind of make it a great place to go to a show, and then brought that to Brooklyn Bowl and the Cap, which are also great places to see a show. Brooklyn Bowl has the sight lines. It's got some food, it's just got elements with the visuals, the screens enable. And because the whole nature of the bowling thing, we're able to pay bands better. And the bowling thing, we just luckily got a chance to prove. I just did it with my partner, Charlie Ryan, on the bowl, and we believed it would work. A lot of people told us, this is not going to work. Can't have an A-level real music venue with it. And they're accurate. And like, we cannot do stand-up comedy. We cannot do Tori Amos on a piano solo. But any kind of band situation, you were a Robert Plant at the Bowl, I think, or I don't know if it was that one because he actually played the Cap too.
No, I saw him at the Cap.
Okay, but he played the Bowl. But anyways, when you have a real rock show, you don't hear it. But the Bowl, that layout enables those visuals of the screens to give us a visual presentation that no other venue its size has. And and when you're up there, it's amazing.
On that very note, there's another line in your book that's just where you're talking about where you're just saying, you say all the little details are important. I try to keep in mind that everything is everything. And it reminded me, there's a line from Nisargadatta Maharaj who said, everything is always happening, right? Which I take to mean pay attention because it's all happening right now. So details is, so it's all preparation for you, right? Get it all ready to go and then let things roll.
And maybe more so now in 2022 than even like ever before, because there's so much swirling around so fast, so just our brains are wired. Like you look at the next generation, and we talk about, maybe we can talk about it or not, but like streaming, one of the reasons why, like I do a bunch of the live streaming stuff, nothing's live, nothing is like the live experience, but I've done a bunch of streaming stuff, film stuff. The world I work in and love, and it sounds like you too, our music works well with streaming because each show is different.
Right.
Bands play different sets each time. So the kids, my child, I have a 16-year-old, she can't watch a stream, dude. Like couldn't sit through it. They're on TikTok. They're like the pop bands don't stream as well for live stream video. But because the audience is so, the younger kids are wired, they can't even sit and watch a full show. Deadheads, no problem watching 4 hours, sitting on the couch, 50 years old. What's up? But the kids today can't even watch, it's so fast and everything's moving so fast. So I kind of think like it's maybe more challenging, but we're on it. That's why everything, like if you go to the bathroom or you can't get a drink, or when you come in, the way you enter the venue at the box office situation, or any of those things goes off, you go off, and there's so much flying around in intensity. I think people are more susceptible to being, when I say go off, it's like, then it's harder to get to that magic place, right? You want everything to go right. in your experience so that the music can take over, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And it brings to mind someone described you once as a guest at your own party. You think like an audience member clearly, and you can feel that through the book. I think it's got to be one of the main things that separated your venues from other ones for me, is that it feels like it was designed with the audience in mind. They're wonderful.
Yeah, the audience is me.
Right?
I know. I love going to shows. Well, I've been to all the venues. I've been to every state in America. I used to love going to shows, traveling, road tripping. Who doesn't love to? That's one reason I did the Cap. It's like, I believe that when you get an artist like Bob Dylan, people would travel from far away to see their favorite band at their favorite venue, because I did that. I do that. So, and that's not that hard. I don't think it's rocket science. I don't deserve an award by doing what's just it's just like, so the Brooklyn Bowl thing was a little bit outside. Most people are like, are you okay? I just showed and I tell this story, I think, in the book. Ron Delsner, who's like the greatest, living promoter, and been around since, doing Beatles shows in the 60s and done everything in between. I showed him, he's 85, he's been around. I invited him to the construction site of Brooklyn Bowl, the original one in Williamsburg, probably about 15 years ago now, because it's open 13 years. And by the way, these venues all take a while to build. They're all taking years. You think it's X, and it's always 2X or time, not just money, everything. Ronnie was there, showed him, I'm like, here's where the stage goes. Here's where the GA floor, the kitchen's over here, the bar's over here, the lane's over here. And he's like, come here. We got to talk, at the end of the tour. And by the way, it's just us there, in this 20,000 square foot space, but he's still like, come here. In the corner, there's no one else there. And he's like, I'm worried about you. Like, what are you doing? What the fuck is going on here? Like, no one's what are you doing? You got a goddamn fucking bowling alley next to the goddamn. And I got a little scared, but we just thought amazing PA system. We got like special machines that make less noise. If you put rock through there, and by the way, it's not close. And we've had Guns N' Roses, Robert Plant, Jane's Addiction, Paul Simon, Kanye West, Adele. I mean, it's crazy, but all those bands played there. Questlove, 300 times. And it's just working now. It's in Vegas and Nashville and Philly and a couple of keys, but I don't know how much you want to get into it, but that layout enabled us to bowl, listen, Wetlands had no other revenue streams. So basic rock club.
Right.
So it's not coincidence that the next thing the dude that had Wetlands created had like certain things that help protect me from like when a night doesn't go well and doesn't sell a lot of tickets from just getting crushed. So like the lanes and that experience, and then we have food, Wetlands had none. We have air conditioning. Wetlands didn't really have a lot of that, sight lines, visual, and a lot of it's about eye candy. My backgrounds, I love film stuff. It's really the layout of the lanes is somewhat Epcot-ish, IMAX, right? It's 150 feet from your eyes and 100 feet wide. Those screens, they're way down there and they're way wide. And we run, when a band's playing, like the live IMAG, it's called, the image magnification of the band, like down at the end, or we're writing psychedelic videos.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it, was that visual element that you couldn't have if you didn't have the lanes.
There's the roof of the Cap, the ceiling of the Cap is another beautiful thing you've done with the visuals. I can't remember when I noticed it for the first time. I might have been at Phil Lesh and I looked up. I was like, oh my God, there's another show going on.
We like the psychedelic, trails and the visuals. And so it's all projection map. There's 10 projectors. It's really a planetarium. When I first walked in the Cap, I saw it, those curved walls, and anyone who's listening can Google probably Capitol Theater or something in Portchester and look, and the images of the walls are curved. By the way, that theater was built in 1926. This is a crazy thing. Thomas Lamb, who's the architect, who's really the preeminent architect in American history for these great palace theaters, he built in the 1910s and 20s 100 of those kinds of, the original Ziegfeld, the Boston Opera House. He did 100 of them. Today, if you tried to build a theater like that, Rock Palace Theater, it would take you like more than 5 years, I think, and 100, millions and millions. And so how does someone with no email, no Zoom, no PDF, I'm serious, no blueprint, I don't know how. And he built, how did he do that?
Magic.
Well, on a similar note, you have put on, at last count in the book, it's got to be more than that now, more than 200 shows with Phil Lesh. And you are a deadhead turned the biggest dead-related promoter in history. And I wanted to ask a couple things. One, how do you wrap your head around that transition from fan to friends with musical heroes? Like, do you pinch yourself? And also, what do you say to the person who's embarking on a career who would never believe the fact that one day they might work with their heroes?
Two things. I've gotten pretty good at like focusing on thinking, like if I was doing a show with Phil and let's say it's this October at the Cap, we're playing 9 shows and over 3 weeks and we're figuring out the lineups. Like I stay focused on like, what's the lineup going to be? What are we going to do? How do we, or how's Phil getting there? Or what are we doing? And try to think about the show, but kind of not think about the show, like what it means. Oh shit, I'm doing, if that makes sense. And so you stay in it, so think in it, but not from far away about it. And that's how I was able to, like, I made the movie with U2 or U2 3D or the Fare Thee Well. If I sat there and be like, oh my God, I'm reuniting Grateful Dead, like you'll trip, on yourself. Well, you will, or you get hit by lightning. And so I've gotten good at like focusing on like, how am I going to do Fare Thee Well, or how are we going to make this YouTube? Because if you sit there and think about it, I think you're screwed. But so that I would tell people just, just, and what I would also tell a young person is like, you can do a lot of what I do and done. Anyone can do, because you can put on a show in Denver, Jacksonville, Des Moines at a bar for 50 people. And, and a lot of the elements of that show that you're putting on for 50 people in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, are similar to what you have to do for a 500 person show or 5,000 or 50,000. You have to book the venue, but it could be a little bar, right? If you're doing 50 people or 100 people, 100, and you have to book a band. It could be your brother's band. You're paying $50, but you still got to book the band. You got to announce the show, market the show, sell the tickets, deal with the guest list, advance the show. Then day of, get the band in, sound check, staffing, box office, the show, the settlement after the show with the band. Like back to, you're paying your bro $50 or you're paying a band 500,000 in a stadium. Like a lot of those elements are similar. You might have one security dude at the bar in Des Moines versus 500 at Soldier Field, but so anyone can go do it. I believe that. And so it just takes reps, times of doing it, anything in this, and I just started early, and had this unique run of Wetlands and then multiple Broken Bowls and the festivals and the Caps and and doing shows all over the country. So now I've done 10, and it's still hard. That's why we started when you're like happy, it's still hard, because all the details matter. Everything matters. Everything is everything. I got that in Jamaica, but So that doesn't go away, even though you've done it 10,000 times. So you just know what to look for better, and you know how to deal with it. And maybe when you make a phone call, it gets through faster. So certain things are easier, but it's still not easy.
But not everyone can conjure a rainbow, right? So tell us about the rainbow conspiracy.
Well, so we brought the dead guys back together, all the surviving members, in 2015. I can't believe it's 7 years ago now. It's actually right now. The final night was July 5th, 2015. So it's 7 years ago today. It's just this giant thing. By the way, I don't think you could do Fare Thee Well the same way today, 7 years later, just because there's so much traffic in the world and social media, and there weren't 200 podcasts. We're doing 500 podcasts, 2015. You didn't have Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus the same way in 2015. Definitely not when I opened Brooklyn Bowl in 2009. I don't think Brooklyn Bowl could be what it is today. There's too much flying around. And anyways, Fare Thee Well owned the space, was a big discussion thing, which was awesome, by the way. It's part of the cool thing. It wasn't just a 1 to 4 hour show. It's the experience of talking about it and prepping it and talking to your friends and coordinating and doing the tour managing of where are we meeting up and what are we, that's fun. People like that. Back to the Cap and Road, people traveling to see a multi-night run. You got people like that. And, but the Fare Thee Well thing was nuts. And Trey from Fish, I knew because I grew up going to Fish and a dad. I just knew putting it together would be 1 + 1 is 3. But it was, it was a little, it's people wondering how it's going to be. When the first show was in Santa Clara, and right at the end of the first set, as they're finishing, Viola Lee Blues, An Amazing Rainbow. It wasn't even raining fully. The sky was one of those purple skies. There was moisture in the air, but it was not raining. And an amazing, people are listening. You can just Google Grateful Dead Rainbow and it's a full-on rainbow came out, and no one could believe, to the point that I watched it with Trixie Garcia, Jerry's daughter, and I was like, "That's your dad, right?" And she's like, "Yep."
Awesome.
But it was so kind of perfect that some people were like, "Yo, dude, that's not possible to be. Did you pay for that? You made that?" And I swear, and a friend of mine, Shirley Halpern, a Billboard, was like, "Come on, dude." And I think she was in a good place in her mind and zoned. And so she was, "Come on, you man." I'm like, "No, I didn't. Come on. It's a rainbow. You can't make a rainbow." And, "Come on." And after a few times, she kept poking me. I was like, "Okay, I spent $50,000.
I know a guy. Got a rainbow guy.
And I know a guy." Exactly. I had a guy. Yeah. $50,000. And then so she reviewed the story. I was kidding, but in her review that night at the end, she's like, "There's rumors maybe Peter Shapiro spent $50,000 on a guy." And that ran. And I guess at that point, Reuters picked up Bill, and we went to bed. And when we woke up the next morning, it had been picked up all globally about whether it was real or not. I swear.
You might remember this back in the day. Way before social media and the internet and so on. I think it was the summer of 93, 3 shows at Cal Expo and 3 shows at Shoreline that I was at. And one of them, it hadn't rained in that part of California for, I don't know, months. And after drums, they sort of did a rain dance, and it actually rained a little bit. And, and it's just a big open field. So, soaked the audience. And then after the rain went away, in the sky, there was a sort of Jerry-faced cloud. And someone yelled, "Hey, look, Jerry's in the sky." And the entire audience looked up and started remarking on the Jerry cloud in the sky.
I believe that.
Awesome moment. Awesome moment.
I do. Weird things. We figured out Phil when it was his 79th birthday. at the Cap. He's 82 now. We were like, we should count how many shows he's done at the Cap, since we reopened it in 2012. And we counted it up, and it was 79 at that point. We've done more now. But that's, on his 79th birthday, he was playing his 79th show. And like, if you had planned that over 10 years, which we did it over, or 8-9 years, you couldn't plan. You know what I mean?
It's like, yeah, one of them would have gotten canceled or something.
So that makes us keep going, though. Really, as in these times, it's like a little bit of that is a lot, and that's why people love that band. The Grateful Dead Experience is like, because it wasn't always great, but when it was, it was of the moment and had that magic. And it's great to go see. I just saw Paul McCartney the other night. It's great, amazing. But he's playing the same set. If you ever seen him, it's very similar. Like, there's just something about, with the Dead, and now there's a ton of offshoot bands and multiple generations who go off into that. But and that's why I did the Wetlands thing when, it was in 1996. Garcia just passed away in August of 95. And I just knew, like, people weren't going to just give up going to shows just because their favorite band now was, gone. They would pivot to like new things, but the core element of like shaking it loose and looking for magic and that kind of nature of like culture and spirit wouldn't fade. They'd look for new bands, and that was then it became the whole jam. That's why I was like, I want to be in the middle of that. And Wetlands was in the middle of that, New York, and so that led to the birth, really. It's kind of wild if you think about it, that Jerry's death did open up opportunity, led to, for a whole kind of ecosystem of new bands.
Right. Like J-Rad and Circles Around the Sun. You put on that tribute to Neil Casal. So another thing you provide, like it's not just a venue. You are deep in that community.
Yeah, and it broadens, like Billy Strings and Goose or the String Jeezes and the Umphreys and the Disco Biscuits and the Sound Tribes. There's all types of, some are more electronic, some are a little more bluegrass. What Billy Strings is doing is really cool. Obviously, some are more Grateful Dead, pure J-Rad, who's reinvented those songs. And then Circles, which doesn't play Grateful Dead, but really evokes that sensibility musically. And, Justin Kreutzmann, Bill's son, and I they started, from doing the separate music.
Right.
At Fairly
Right. That box set, Highway Butterfly, is great. I just got that recently. It's amazing. I didn't know what a great songwriter Neil was.
Yeah, Neil was great. Yeah, I'm sad that he's not with us right now. Such a talent.
There's so much stuff in your book that's like, there's great anecdotes, but there's great also lessons, life lessons and stuff. And one of my favorite ones was, you said, no's lead to yeses. Often can't get to a yes until you've had a few no's. Sometimes it's just about building awareness for what you're doing. And the example you put there was, you asked Dylan's manager to play the first New Year's at the Cap, and they got back to you and said, no, they can't do it. And then they came back to you and said, how about we have Dylan open the venue instead? And so you wouldn't have got there had you not asked for the other thing. I was at that show. Thank you. And I think that's a huge lesson for people. Just keep pushing, right? And don't get dissuaded or discouraged by no's, because it's part of life.
Yeah, they're still hard when I get them, and you get them. We each get them, and like, you got to push through. But often a good yes is not possible without a no. And you just told that story there. We would not have gotten Dylan to open the venue if we hadn't chucked the idea of playing New Year's and they said no, but then, it doesn't always obviously lead to a yes, but a lot of things I've had happen, started with, there's like good no's. And everyone out there, you guys know what that is when you're like, okay, but at least you got no conversation. And like, you're definitely further along your net positive versus just not having made the ad, not having gotten a no. There are good no's. That's for sure. And then it's figuring out how best to like, work around that no, when you want to be your weight, you aggressive, like, and that's a big part of it all. It's like that touch, it gets easier as you've done it. Like we talked about the reps, and people with the rep or doing it comes, people, you did it with people or the managers or the bands, they're all my friends, and the agents. Like when I started, it was a lot harder.
Right.
And for me, at least, because I didn't know, and that's ironic, thing, I guess, just about business is it can be hardest when you're little and on your own. And once you're more established and done it and aged and experienced the relationships, all that, and maybe you're more scale, you're a little bigger, it's not easy ever, but it's certain things get easier when you just pick up the phone and call someone, because you've done shit with them for 20 years. When you're young, and I took over Wetland, right? Then you're like, you really got to make some moves. And these kids today, they're just going to have to we're counting on them, right?
Right. And that's it. You got this line that says, I suppose the idea is to put in the work and let the magic come to you. Right. So that's the key. Wrapping up here. One of the funniest lines in your book is you said, one of the most time-consuming aspects of my life is dealing with guest list requests. I have multiple shows going on simultaneously, and people hit me up all the time. The problem is that after putting on shows in New York for over 25 years, it turns out I know more people than I know. So is this a bad time to put in a request for tickets to the next Dylan show at the Capitol?
I'm just quiet, but I'm working on that, actually. I am, no joke, I'm working on some Dylan. And by the way, I'm hopeful that I got a good no the other day because I was working on one thing, and like to get to the next thing of it happening, like Dylan in particular comes maybe with a couple no's to get to a yes. But I got you for the next Dylan show. He'll be back at the Cap. Trying to figure it out now, hopefully, and he's amazing, like 80 years old, 81 probably, I think now. And he, at least particularly seeing him in a theater, I mean, that's what's great about the Cap. There's different ways to see shows. You go out, big outdoor shows or big indoor, but like, that's why I love the Cap is to me in a lot of ways, it's like a club theater.
Yeah.
And it's got that benefits of the club, which are fun, and moving around that GA floor we talked about. Actually, Tedeschi Trucks is a band that like loves the Beacon, but one in almost all in New York. So I had to, luckily I have the relationship with them, but they're pretty set there. They do like 5 nights every fall in September. When they play Chicago Theater or they play the Fox in Oakland, pretty much I think all these venues that they play, are fixed seating. And so I really made the pitch to them, and they enjoy it for this, is that it is a GA floor. It is a bit of a club theater. A GA show, you can move around, you can find your friends, just different. And they're both great, so I made that pitch about to counter, the yang to the yin of the Beacon, and same Dylan. I think on his last tour.
I do back-to-back Beacon Capitol. I've done that twice, I think.
Right. So they're a little different, right? Because one's seated and one's GA. They're different. They have pros and cons. But I know he likes the GA. His guy told me that Bob and just the energy that the artist feels, it's a different energy. A GA show packed, sold out. It's just more, there's more coming off that crowd, than everyone's sitting.
Absolutely. Pete, we won't take any more of your time. This has been delightful. You are indeed a merchant of happiness. Thank you, thank you, thank you, both for all the shows, but also this great book.
Thanks, Duff.
Listeners, again, it's called The Music Never Stops. It's out now. Check it out. It's a great book.
Thanks, Duff. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Pete.
Great talking to you.
Okay, so that did not disappoint. Pete Shapiro, everyone loves Pete Shapiro, and now anyone who was listening to that knows why. Not only does he put on some of the best music, not just in New York, but around the country, he's a fucking awesome dude, right? You can tell just by talking to him. And also, he's such an inspiration for me from like anyone who wants, if you love something enough, you can make it your career. You can make it what you do. You can immerse yourself in the thing that you love. All you have to do is put in the work and the determination and the effort. And, the next thing you know, you go from being a deadhead in college. He's younger than we are. He's a couple years younger than we are. You go from being a deadhead in college who's following the dead around, making a gonzo documentary about the parking lot, the deadhead culture in the parking lots, to 20 years later, reuniting the dead and putting on like one of the biggest dead shows of all time at Soldier Field. It's unbelievable.
It's incredible. It really is. So cool. I just also like when you guys were talking about, the sort of, obviously it's like a spiritual experience seeing music. And I have a buddy guy, Sully, that I coach with here, Andrew Sullivan, who went down on his own to 2 Dead & Co shows in I'm going to say November of last year. He went down to Texas and saw like Dallas and Houston or something like that, or Santa. I think it was Dallas and Houston. And I was like, wow, just going down on your own. I was like, that's pretty crazy little solo trip. And he was like, it's my therapy.
Right. And that's the other thing. We didn't really get into that. Like the music that he sort of specializes in, right, is the jam band, the sort of improvisational heavy guys. And what he alluded to there a couple times was that's where the most magical musical experiences come from, is with the people who aren't just playing the same set list the same way, and that are pushing the boundary every show they do. That's why Phil Lesh can play 10 shows in a row every fall at the Cap, and people will go to all of them.
Well, that's how you get a following too, where people will follow you around. Nobody's going to follow around a musician who plays a set list the exact same way every single night, right? I mean, you might go to a couple, you might go to back or be a super fan and go to a few, but after a while, you've seen the show. Whereas with like the jam bands where it's improvisational, you're seeing a different show every time. So for any music fans who are listening, the book is amazing. And it's got so many stories that it'll blow your mind. Check out the book.
It's about putting on 10,000 shows, but it'll blow your mind how many big name artists Pete Shapiro has not only worked with, but has been in effective partnership with for 20 plus years. I think it makes him different from most music promoters, right? Especially for the corporate ones, right? Where all they're doing is trying to sell tickets at a venue. And he has fostered an entire culture, especially in New York, between the Capitol and Brooklyn Bowl. People feel like family there. I have friends that are literally part of that family that have been to dozens, if not hundreds of shows because of the ethos that he's created. The man knows how to make rainbows. Like, what else do you need to know?
Yeah. I've got one for you. I mean, it's a little bit of an easy one for this show, but grateful. And it's probably obvious to most people because it's what it means. But, the great in grateful, right? Grate, like, comes from gratitude, right? Like it's, like literally to be full of gratitude. But it's also, and if you think in Italy, even, thank you is grazie, right? Grazie is Italian. So it's
the Grazie Dead. Let's go see the Grazie Dead.
The Grazie Dead. But the interesting thing when I looked this up is that it's also related to grace, right? Like the Grazie grace, God's grace. I don't know. I thought you might do something with that, Duff.
Totally. Pete Shapiro's doing God's work, right? He's like he said, there are moments when you are at a show of an artist that you love where you have a transcendent experience, right? And we're not talking about being on drugs. We're talking about being caught up in the music, and it takes you to a different place. It takes you into the realm of the spirit. So absolutely. And, the whole scene around him is dedicated to that. We just bought tickets to see the National at the Capitol in September. When I lived in the city, Brooklyn Bowl was my favorite venue, especially when I lived in Williamsburg, because it was down the street.
Yeah.
But these days, the Capitol is my favorite music venue of all time. He's done a ridiculous job restoring it, and plus, it's just so many great shows there.
All right.
I have one for you, too. This one's a little unusual. It's a bit of a mind bender, but I read it this weekend, and I just want to talk about it. So on the weekend, I was reading the Upanishads, which is like part of India's scriptural heritage, a translation by this guy, Swami Nikhilananda. And he pointed out the following. He had this line, and it was sort of in the context of, the different followers of different religions and what it means. And he said, how can the rational mind say that one idea is intrinsically different from another? Krishna, Buddha, and Christ are but waves on the infinite ocean of existence. I am. They all contain the same stuff as their inner core. So I was thinking about that. I was like, wait, what does that mean? And he's basically getting at, what are ideas actually made of? Right? What is an idea at the very bottom of it? Right? It's
electricity?
Basically,
is it electricity?
It's like a vibration in consciousness, right? Something like that. So they're all actually made of the same thing. So who is to say that one idea is better than another? Because ultimately they're all the same thing at their core, right? So it got me thinking. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So in the West, we run around, claiming to have better ideas than the other people. And sort of it's so misguided because they're all made of idea stuff, which is the same stuff. So it's all one thing, right? Just brings you back to that. It's all one thing.
There's only one thing. Right.
That's it. And what Pete Shapiro will do is, if you go to one of his venues and get into the music, you will find that one thing and you will go to that place. That is why people see live music. That is why, you, me, and so many of our friends keep going and going and going and going to see live music, because it's transcendental when it's on. To further the sort of move into mind bendery, I want to close with the Aurobindo here that's sort of touches on one of my favorite lines in the book, which I mentioned there, was he says, I try to keep in mind that everything is everything, right? And that basically means you got to pay attention because it's all happening right now. So Aurobindo is describing in this section the absolute, right? Absolute reality, God, the Lord, whatever you want to call it. And he's basically trying to he's writing a sentence which is trying to get the point across that it's not just this, it's not just that, it's this, that, and all the other stuff. So here he goes. The absolute is beyond personality and beyond impersonality, and yet it is both the impersonal and the supreme person and all persons. The absolute is beyond the distinction of unity and multiplicity, and yet it is the one and the innumerable many in all the universes. It is beyond all limitation by quality, and yet is not limited by a qualityless void, but is to all infinite qualities. It is the individual soul and all souls and none of them. It is the formless Brahman and the universe. It is the cosmic and the supracosmic spirit, the supreme Lord, the supreme self, the supreme Purusha, and the supreme Shakti, the ever unborn who is endlessly born, the infinite who is innumerably finite, the multitudinous one, the complex simple, the many-sided single, the word of the silence ineffable. So, pretty much everything. You follow that?
Most things. Yeah. I think there's a couple things that he hasn't encompassed in that.
It's all the things, right? Thanks again, Pete Shapiro. for all that you do. That was a great interview. We'll be back with you folks next week.
Bye-bye.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now, right here, right now, whoa, right here, right now.
You've been listening to How to Tickle Yourself with your hosts Duff McDonald and Matt McButter. You can help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. You can talk to us and see what else is happening on Instagram and Facebook at How to Tickle Yourself. This program was recorded in Studio B of the historic Rockledge Recording Studio and the Tunnel Under Arundel. Right Here, Right Now, our original 16-part theme music was written and recorded by the legendary Paul Reddick and Kyle Ferguson of the Sidemen, with the brilliant Steve Mariner on bass and drums and in the mixing room. The podcast is produced and distributed by Storic Media. Our editor is Andrew Steiner. Our coordinator is Samantha Abramovitz. Our producers are Kristen Verbitsky and Chuck LaBella. For more information, visit storicmedia.com. That's STORIC media.com.
My love, my dear.